Hello and welcome back to the On the Slab Horror Show, the show we bring to you each and every Friday night. We do this on a Friday night because Friday night is horror night. But that's enough about that one. This one's not about the old days. This one's about yourself, Dillon. For the people that don't know who Dillon is, Dillon Brown here is the director of what I'm going to describe as the best found footage Sasquatch movie. Actually, all in all, the best Sasquatch movie there is, and that includes Exist, which was a bigger budget one um, of Tahoe Joe and the upcoming Tahoe Joe 2, the Sierra Nevada conspiracies.
Bigfoot conspiracy, yes.
Sorry, Sierra
Um,
Nevada Bigfoot conspiracies.
well, first of all, super appreciative that you would call the movie that because there was a time when I was making Tahoe Joe, the first one, when I almost thought, I don't know if I want to show anybody this movie. I don't know if this is really working out how we want to make it. And then when we finished, we thought, okay, we think we put together a pretty good project, and I was feeling a little better about it. And then we pitched it to like 5 different distributors, and we were just rejection, rejection. Nobody wanted it. And so then I went back to thinking, okay, maybe we didn't make a very good movie. And the guy, Michael Steinberg over at POV Horror that runs a found footage streaming service, he said, hey, I'll take it. So we sent it over to him, and he's like, yeah, this is great. I would love to push this. And it found its way to Tubi just a couple weeks after he licensed it from us. And it was the cheapest movie we made so far. It was $800 to make the whole movie. And it's made like 20,000 or something probably total. I mean, it was like the biggest margins ever. And yeah, it's the one that we're most known for. It's the one that everybody wanted a sequel for. So it's just funny how that worked out.
I mean, I heard about this, so I wouldn't have known too much. Growing up, I obviously being in Ireland, you don't get a lot of the indie horrors. So it's only in the last sort of 3 or 4 years I've really digged in and started watching more of them when they become more widely available. But I once I joined this podcast about 2 years ago, I started when we started getting guests, it were all indie stars, and this movie kept coming up and kept coming up in name. And they're like, "Have you seen this? Have you seen this?" I was like, "No, I don't even know where I can find that." And they're like, "It's on Tubi," and I was like, "I can't get that." And they were like, "Oh, have you seen this?" And I'd say on average, I probably heard, "Have you seen Tahoe Joe?" about 20 or 30 times off different people,
That
and
is cool.
I was like, "No," and I says, "I will. I'll eventually do it." And I started working my way through guests. Obviously ended up with a former colleague of yours, and Jake Robinson. He spoke so highly of the movie itself to me. That was probably about a year ago that we were with Jake, and I think in the last couple of weeks, someone else mentioned it to me on one of the, so like on the Facebook pages. Obviously, not the Horror Dads one that you're in. That's where we hooked up. But on one of the other pages, they were like, "This is a great found footage." And I was like, "I do like an L found footage," and I was like, "Grand." And then we linked up when you posted in the Horror Dads page, and here we are. Finally
Yeah,
got
no,
to check it out.
that's awesome. I always forget that because for us over here in the indie world, it's like Tubi is kind of our version of Netflix, right? For
Yeah,
the little guy, it's like we're not going to get on Netflix, we're not going to get on Hulu, and I'm okay with that because at some point maybe it'll lead to getting there. But right now, Tubi's like the goal. They pay the best. It has 70 million subscribers. I mean, it is a big gateway for us. But I always forget in so many of those groups we have so many viewers from Canada or the UK, where you're at, New Zealand, Australia, and Tubi doesn't work over there. Or if they do have Tubi, it doesn't have the same movies, and I always forget that it's not available. So thankfully, uh, we got on a couple of other little platforms. I think there's one called Plex. There's one called Wicked Horror TV. And some of them are really small, but they don't have the VPN problem, and they can be streamed anywhere. So it has helped us to get some people over there. And then like for you, anybody that wants to chat about it, I'm like, oh, I got a YouTube screener that I just always have at the ready so I can send that out because
Click
um,
bang.
yeah, right. You know, and my thing too is a lot of the found footage fans in those groups have been so supportive of movies they've been able to watch, um, that I'm never going to hold them back from watching my movie if they can't find it. So I'm like, if you've tried and you can't seem to find it somewhere, hey, just shoot me a message. I'll send you the YouTube link. Like, watch it. Am I getting paid for that? No, I don't care. But I would much rather them get to watch the movie. They show that much interest in it. Hit me up. I will send anybody a screener that wants to see the movie.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. I said I didn't really know too much about it. Obviously, there's probably a legend behind it. I'm not sure. Um, Obviously, being in Ireland, we don't have a lot of those legendary stories of Bigfoot running around certain areas. Now, I used to, myself and Ian, one of the other co-hosts, used to, still do follow Wes Germer and the Sasquatch Chronicles podcast.
Mhm.
And that's a name of the play area that keeps coming up as the Sierra Nevada area.
Yeah, so
Um,
that's actually over here where I live. It's basically Northern California, and it kind of like butts right up to where I'm at on the Nevada side because I'm so close to the California border that it only takes me about 25 minutes to go from Nevada into California. And so most people hear Nevada, they think Las Vegas, and then they think of the flat desert that's out there. We're in a really unique spot where to the west, I have California Sierra Nevada forests and mountains and snow and all that. But if you go east, it gets flatland desert, and they kind of merge right where I live. Um, and so Bigfoot stuff is really big here because we're so close to kind of the region where a lot of people have had encounters or sightings. But the funniest thing about Tahoe Joe is a real legend, but it's not a Bigfoot legend. Tahoe Joe was a guy, like a mountain man, that during a some kind of a battle between, I don't know if California and Nevada were having some kind of a standoff, but there was some sort of fight going on, like a civil war type thing. And there was this guy, Tahoe Joe, who was like up in the hills, and he was stealing stuff from one army and selling it to the other, and then he'd steal stuff from them and go sell it to the other one, and that's how he was funding himself. And he was just this crazy kind of legendary, just like a hermit, I guess, that lived up there, and he was basically playing both sides. Um, and it became a famous restaurant brand. People started calling these steakhouses, Tahoe Joe's, and it was based off that guy. Well, I wanted to do a Bigfoot movie, and I kept thinking I need some sort of a name for our Bigfoot that we would maybe go with. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be fun if we sort of took the Tahoe Joe legend of like this folklore hero, but somebody applied that name to Bigfoot himself and just started calling him Tahoe Joe because he's around the famous Lake Tahoe. And so I just thought, heck with it. We're gonna call our Bigfoot Tahoe Joe based off that guy. And I started noticing that there are actually people around this area that do falsely label Bigfoot as Tahoe Joe because they actually got the original story of the mountain man wrong and thought he was a Bigfoot. And so what I thought I was making up apparently is a real mistake that people were making about a real guy who really is named Tahoe Joe. It's a whole funny, hilarious thing, but we're in it now. So,
do you think maybe subconsciously, not subconsciously because you can't hear when you're asleep, that you heard that somewhere? Maybe if you're out at a party or you've had a few intoxicating beverages and heard it somewhere, and it stuck in your mind somewhere, and then came to the front
it
when you were
probably
making.
did. I do remember, like, I always knew of the Tahoe Joe name because of the restaurants, and I always knew there was like these diner. I think they're like steakhouses, and I knew of those, and I kept thinking the whole time, if I call Bigfoot this, I wonder if people are going to confuse it with the restaurant. Well, then finally I looked into it one day on a like a historical website, and then I found the story about the guy, and I'm like, okay, that is actually what the legend was based off of, was this guy. But then I started talking to locals, and they were all calling him Bigfoot. I mean, some of them knew he was a mountain man or whatever, but others were actually saying, you know what, that's what we call Bigfoot up there. And I'm like, well, how did that happen? And I think they must have somewhere got the signals crossed too. And so I just decided to roll with it, and then it stuck. So
Chinese whispers, isn't it?
yeah, right.
Yeah. I mean, like I've always been intrigued by the Bigfoot lore and mystique. I'm quite a big fan of cryptids in general.
hmm
Would you be?
So I loved, oh my gosh, like Loch Ness Monster is like the coolest thing for me. I'm being a dinosaur fan. You know, I always had the hope that there was some sort of, uh, you know, plesiosaur, some dinosaur that survived all those years and was living out there in the loch. And, but the Bigfoot thing, I always thought it was cool, but I've spent a lot of time in the woods, um, like a lot of time growing up. And then with all of the technology and stuff that's everywhere now and cameras, I just, as much as I love making Bigfoot movies, I cannot say that I'm like a huge Bigfoot believer myself, purely because I feel like we would have better evidence now. Um, but then the other side of me wants to believe that there is like a yearning for it, that I want it to be there, and I'm never gonna fully discredit it because I can't say for sure. Um, and it is fun to go out in the woods at night and tell stories of Bigfoot, because then everything scares the shit out of you when you hear a noise and you're like, you know, then you start to believe suddenly. So it's one of those things where I love the fictional side of cryptids. I love people's artwork. I love movies with cryptids, but I don't necessarily find myself like researching them and believing fully, because I've never had an experience. I guess maybe that's why.
Fair enough. It's an honest answer, really, isn't it? I mean, they make for great movie making, um, because it's the lore of the unknown, really.
Yeah,
Like how could someone tell you that Bigfoot doesn't look like that? Because let's be like, has people seen them? Maybe has it ever been caught on camera? And you can definitively say no. So you can take your own view on what you think it looks like.
absolutely.
Um,
That's what we did. Um, when we were making the first Tahoe Joe, I didn't really have any idea what I was going to do conceptually, and most of it was because the movie was made for $800, and I thought, okay, this is more of a story that's like a mystery of what's going on. It's a little more of a like a personal story and people driven, but of course we have to have the Bigfoot side of it. So um, I got an old ghillie suit, and I got in my garage with a can of brown paint, and I bought an old gorilla mask and I repainted it and I put some new teeth in it and I put a wig on it and I made the hair all gross and rolled it in the dirt and spray painted it up and just kept playing with it until we got something that was usable. Uh, but the problem, the problem was, I saw it the whole time I'm making it, and I'm like, yeah, that'll work, that'll work. And then we get out there, and I've got it in camera, and it looks so stupid that I'm almost laughing. Right? I'm like, this is the dumbest thing. This looks so bad. So my co-director and I, Michael Rock, who's also the co-star in the film, we were trying to figure out how are we going to pull this off. And so at first we thought, what if we just never show anything and we just use sounds and everything? But then it was like, no, that's going to be boring. We got to have somewhat of a payoff. So we decided to switch from a daytime story where Bigfoot came out to where let's just shoot it all at night, and I'm going to put the camera in like a night vision mode. And so essentially I used the Jaws method, which was
less is
give the
more.
audience the idea that it's there, but don't necessarily show them too much of it, you know, either. And so we really were trying to be careful with what we showed, because I didn't have a great design and I didn't have a great looking suit. The suit like fell apart completely by the time the shoot was over. It was like falling off the actor. Pieces of it were stuck to trees. It was like hilarious as we're filming this thing. Uh, but it worked because I think being a huge fan of Jaws, and knowing what Spielberg went through with the shark that never wanted to work, I thought, okay, well, we kind of have our shark that doesn't want to work here. How are we going to use it in a way that can still be a Bigfoot movie without really showing it much? So it was really quick shots with the camera. It was implying, with sound effects more than actually showing. And then it was, if we do show him quickly, we need to have, some kind of a way to distract the eye. So I thought putting it in night vision, making the footage a little grainy, would help with that. So, I mean, yeah.
I think it certainly did help. As I was saying to you off screen, I said that we've recently done an interview with Alberto Corredor, who done Baghead, and we said the same to him about his witch in that. I said less is more, and it works perfectly.
Yeah.
When it's done right, obviously. I know a lot of people have issues with the likes of Blair Witch because there's no real payout to it. I still think it's a fantastic movie. I'm not one of
Well, it
these that's
has,
one and done.
yeah, and it has like an ending that is so, normally I would probably be peeved in a movie like that with an ending so abrupt. I'd probably be like, but for Blair Witch, it almost seemed like the only appropriate ending was that, because I think it
Yeah.
made, at the time, nobody really had seen found footage like that, and it was done so well with their marketing campaign that I feel like the really abrupt ending with no answers at all made the film that much scarier, because the first thing I did after seeing it was immediately go to school and talk to all my friends about, oh my God, I think they're really dead. I don't, and I was fully convinced it was real stuff, and it scared me to death.
Well,
Um,
that was '99, so there would have been no internet really at that time. No,
no, and
I didn't see it till '05 when we got shown it in school. Um, for one of our exams. And I was hooked. It went on to be one of my favorite movies for a number of years. Now I do think I've watched it too much, and I'm like, oh, okay.
yeah, it's so authentic though. They did such a great job of never making you feel like you're watching a movie. You legitimately feel like you're just seeing clips, because it's very disjointed. They have very harsh cuts. It never feels like there's a crew around, setting anything up. It just feels like you're with three people in the woods, and it's so authentic that way. And a lot of movies have really tried hard to capture that magic, and they just can't, and a lot of it is because we know the tricks now. We've seen the magicians, you know
The
story,
reveals.
or whatever, but behind the curtain, yeah, like we know the trick. But that, yeah, it's just, there's something they did with Blair Witch that doesn't necessarily feel like a movie to me. I guess that's just the only way I can describe it. It's the only thing I've seen where it legitimately felt like I put a VHS tape in from somebody's handy cam and said, "Here, watch this," and it feels completely, convincing.
I mean, this one would be right up there. Tahoe Joe would be up there like that for me. Because there's parts of it you see him with the drone. You see the kind of squabbles between them. You see that it's not you're walking, so it's not a perfect straight road. Do you know what I mean? You're running, you fall over. It's
Yeah,
all of that into it. Makes it much more believable. And like going back to Blair Witch, obviously there's that scene with Heather Donahue when she's where she's running in the dark and her nose is leaking because she's crying, things like that. But where you seen what I loved about Tahoe Joe was your man Stephen that they meet up with, and the fact that he's just on the beer the whole way along the hike, and it's like the government this, the government that, and it's like
yeah,
like one of them conspiracy theorists
absolutely. So his name's Shane.
or
He's
Shane. Sorry,
a
yeah.
Yeah, well, and that's his real name too. We actually just used his real name in the movie. It made it easier for us to interact that way. But he's actually a true life friend of Michael Rock. Shane is a sheriff's officer, so he's on the law enforcement side over here.
Oh,
And so for
lovely.
him, it was fun to get to play like the total opposite type of character that he is in real life. Um, and we wanted to do that because I work for the Department of Defense over here in the United States. Michael is an actual trained Green Beret who did multiple tours over in Afghanistan, so he is a war veteran. And then Shane is a Marine, and he's a veteran and also a current law enforcement. So we have a lot of ties to government anyway. And we wanted to have fun with sort of poking fun at our own jobs with not trusting the government, even though we all really work for the government. And so it was a lot of fun for us to go out there and play with that whole conspiracy angle.
To be fair, you say it in the movie as well.
Yeah, and we brought that in, and still, that's what's so fun about Tahoe Joe is Mike and I have worked on a lot of projects together. But when we first started, I wrote and directed. Mike was the actor, and that was the role. And then when we got into Tahoe Joe, it originally was my story, and I was going to just direct it. But I was noticing that the way my brain works is I go straight to the monster stuff. I love monsters. I love the supernatural. I love all that. So I start formulating stories, and I'm like, all my efforts in there on Tahoe Joe himself. And I'm thinking of the creature, and I'm thinking of what are the people, going through when he's making them disappear, and how are we going to film these scenes? And Michael has a very different mindset. He has a very logical, analytical brain. So when we were making Tahoe Joe, he would say things, that doesn't really make sense. He'd say, I wouldn't in a situation actually say that, or I don't think somebody would really do that. And it was good because it was putting me back to earth, and it was getting me out of the making a movie that was really fictional, and it was helping me create something that felt more realistic. And so a lot of those decisions were Mike's, or suggestions really. Mike would say, hey, what if, when we get down to the road, you turn the wrong way because you're in a panic and you don't even realize that you've turned the wrong direction, because people really do that. Yeah, everybody.
I got so annoyed at that.
Everybody. We showed it in the theater. I had a whole group of people there, family, friends, just general public. There was probably 100 or so folks watching the movie with us. And as soon as I turned left and I was supposed to go right, the whole theater is yelling, "No!" And I even heard my mom yelling, "You idiot! You're going the wrong way!" And
you done the horror movie trope.
Exactly right. Well, so that was another thing I wanted to do too. Was I had to balance Mike out multiple times too, and say, hey, look, you have to remember though, we are making an entertaining movie, so there's going to have to be moments where we have to sort of, we have to throw a little bit of logic out the window and play into telling the story. But that's why he and I have stayed working together, because we balance each other so well. I can go way off into fairy tale land and tell all these really crazy stories and come up with these crazy characters. Mike brings that level of grounded reality to help keep everything flowing smooth and to make it feel realistic. And so we just, ever since we did the Tahoe Joe thing, and I decided, I basically was like, look, bro, you just should co-direct this with me. You're doing so much of the work anyway in terms of throwing in storylines. Like, I don't need to be the only director here. You should just co-direct. So he jumped on board, and he stuck with it for Tahoe Joe 2, came back to co-direct and star with me. And it was wonderful when we did this sequel, because Mike started to learn camera stuff. His acting has, improved because he keeps, refining his craft. And he's starting to become a storyteller himself. So Tahoe Joe 2 was like the easiest film I've ever done. We had a great blueprint from the first movie to follow, but the second one, it had no problems, because we are so in sync where we're finishing each other's sentences, and Mike lets me come up with all the crazy monster stuff, and he comes up with the more kind of grounded in reality moments, and it's like the perfect yin and yang.
You cannot go wrong with that once you have someone that you work with. And I brought that up to a few different indie stars that I've had on. Most notably, I bring it up with Cheney Morrow. It seems like him and Damien Maffei have that connection, and him and Elsie Holt. There's a whole little group of them that tend to be in each other's movies now at the minute. and it's great because you can legitimately see that they're most likely friends off screen.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's cool too because I produced Mothman for my friend Joshua, who I started Horror Dads with, and Cheney's
Yeah,
in
it's
that
awesome.
movie. And then Josh went and made The Woodman and put LC in that movie. So it's kind of fun that we work together all the time with these other actors that work together all the time, and it's starting to become a very fun, uh, close knit community where you start to really see that you're not that far from each other really in all these projects.
Yeah, both of those movies were brilliant, by the way. I seen both of them.
So I'm
Um,
sure you noticed all the connections then between the Woodman and Tahoe Joe, and I'm sure if you
Lin-
sat through the credits, there was some things that were leading to. I just won't say anything more, but we're definitely building to a big crossover event.
Uh, yeah, I know I mentioned it to you in that group chat on Facebook about the connection of the two people that are in it.
Yeah, Ben Logan
Uh,
character. And then I won't say anything else about the other one for people that haven't seen it yet, because I know that
yeah,
that ending of Woodman is going to get a lot of people excited.
yeah. Woodman, I was like Anna. I done an interview with Anna about a year and a bit ago, for Mutilator 2, and she just got cast in Woodman not long after that, and I'd been waiting that long to see it, and then she's been cast in Late Checkout as well, obviously with LC and Cheney and stuff. So they're all kind of intertwining in movies now. And like I'm seeing this person share it, I'm like, yes, I will watch that.
Yeah,
And like
it's
I
so
keep in
fun.
contact with a lot of people that I've done interviews with. So like I'm like, yeah, grand. Oh, you're working with that person. Drop my name in there.
Right? It's so fun. I feel the same way. When I first got started, I would see those names out there, and I'm watching their movies, and I'm just thinking, oh, someday I wish I could be there, and it felt so far away. And now with all the films and stuff I've either done myself or produced through Horror Dads, um, now suddenly it's like we've all reached across the aisle, and I'm realizing that these guys are not that they're very attainable. They're right here, and um, it's cool to me. It's very much that feeling of I worked my way up the ladder, and I got to my little dream that I wanted to hit. So it's cool. It's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm gonna throw it out there now, and I said it in a couple of episodes that he's been on. If you want a bad guy, you cast Cheney Morrow. Simple as that.
I know. I just watched. Well, I had seen it before, but I watched Malum again, and he's so creepy in
My
that movie.
God, I text him after I watched it the first time, and I was like, "That's the most Charles Manson character that you could have got. That isn't Charles Manson."
Yep, yeah, I love that movie. I think they did a really good job, and I loved the Last Shift. I thought that was so good, but I thought that was really cool that Anthony got a chance to
Make it his
basically
way.
remake his movie how he really wanted with more funding. And if I ever had that opportunity to probably redo one of mine, I might do that too someday. I think that's a really cool thing that he got to do, and he just nailed it. The movie is it's scary and gross and creepy, and it's a fun watch.
Well, it's not a fun watch at all.
Well, I guess
Um,
yeah, for horror fans who like that stuff, it's a fun watch. But for most people, it's like I'm so affected by that, I don't want to watch that
it's
again.
uncomfortable if you don't like that kind of thing, but it's so good.
Yeah.
But I'm a bit conscious of time, so that's probably enough on those ones. So we have Tahoe Joe 2 upcoming. How did you just go about that one? Obviously, the popularity of the first one kicked it on, but
It really did. I didn't know if I really wanted to go back to make another one for a little bit. But Mike and I went and did another project called Ghost. I happen to have the hat on. Um, and that was like a really fantastical project. There's nothing realistic about it. It's about these church mercenaries hunting down demons and cultists, and I wanted to go kind of wild with it, and I wanted to make it feel very much like a 1980s bad action movie that I love with like Steven Seagal or Jean Claude Van Damme. So we made this action horror film. I mean, and when I say like it goes out there, it's like at one point, Michael Rock, who's a mercenary for the Catholic Church, is sword fighting like a 7 foot tall demon. You know, like we went way out there and had a great time
You
with it.
went proper supernatural with it.
Yeah, I did. Really, we did. And I mean, I got Vernon Wells from Mad Max 2 and Weird Science and Commando. He's
Nice.
We got Vernon to be in the movie. He plays Mike's dad. It's just a small, really small one scene role, but it was so cool to get to work with him. And uh, so we went and did that movie, and we had a blast. It was so much fun. The problem was, and still is I made that movie for myself, which is not a problem. I think every director has that one movie they want to make that they don't really care if an audience is gonna dig it or not. I made it because I wanted to pay homage to those movies I grew up with, and I wanted to make a movie like that. And it has its fans for sure. There's actually a lot of people that really dig Ghost, but it does not have the popularity that Tahoe Joe has. It's like every time I would jump on a podcast to promote Ghost, everybody would just ask me about Tahoe Joe the whole time, and so I started realizing like, okay, that's definitely the one that people really clung to. And so Mike and I were talking it around, like if we do a sequel, what could be a story where we could go? And at first, we had another idea that we were thinking of, and then it got so complicated that we basically kind of decided to go back to keeping it more simple. And we said, you know what? We have the crazy ending of Tahoe Joe that's just kind of like, what is going on? And it's very mysterious and it's kind of out of nowhere. So we were thinking we need to expand on that ending and kind of give people an explanation as to what was actually happening. And we wanted to make a sequel that would make you watch the first movie a little different after seeing what's really going on in the sequel. So we just started writing, and I wrote out a treatment. I sent it to Mike, and standard Mike, he's just like, yeah, I love it. It's good.
I mean,
But I knew that he would be the guy when I needed him to, that could fill in all those logical gaps, like I said, you know, in the past that he does. And he would be that kind of voice that would say, I do like that idea, but would it make sense because? And I'm like, oh, good call. There's a plot hole there. That's a good idea. So then I would get back to writing and kind of, you know, close that up. And so we basically just did the same thing. But we filmed Tahoe Joe 2, essentially the entire thing, edited it, and had it done in about 1 month. It's about all it took. And it's just because we work so fast together, and we're so in tune with what's going on. But Tahoe Joe 2 is, I think it's very much, it feels like it belongs with the first movie very much. You get a lot of the same references and things, but we tried our hardest to not make it feel like a full remake of what we already did. We wanted to give people something different. So we definitely took the movie into more kind of monster movie territory. And that was one of the big things that people were asking for with the sequel anyway. They wanted more Bigfoot stuff. They wanted more of that kind of conspiracy angle. So we're like, you know what? We're doing a sequel. Let's just go bigger. And so we got a way better Bigfoot suit that looks a lot cooler on camera that I could show a little more. But we still also wanted to play that horror movie Jaws kind of vibe too, where I didn't want to overshow him either. So I still kept him in the shadows and did what I could to not expose the audience too much to him.
I will say I noticed even the first one when you were saying when they were in the ghillie suit, the second one the outfit is much different, and when you watch the film you'll understand why. But the use of camera trickery to watch where he's going and then he's gone in a second, or the flashes of light that come and he's gone, was so clever. And that's why I said it in the intro. I think Tahoe Joe, I've only seen it the once and I only watched it today, is probably the best Sasquatch movie, and I've seen about 5 or 6 of them. And I said, obviously we brought up Blair Witch. Obviously Eduardo Sanchez done Blair Witch, and he done Exists. And I would say it's still better than that, and I had a much bigger budget than 800 quid.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that because I was really inspired by Exist. I think it's such a fun movie. It's got
Oh, it is.
amazing,
It's really enjoyable.
and their creature is just so cool. But somebody told me their creature costs like $100,000 to make, and I'm like, whoa, I could make like 100,000 Bigfoot movies with that.
Yes.
Whew. But you know, we with that first movie, yeah, it was really, it's like a lot of those decisions. I wish I could take credit for a lot of the decisions we made, but a lot of it was just out of necessity. It was looking at the footage and going, oof, oh, that suit looks so bad. So let's find a way to,
Trial and error.
exactly right, you know, and it's like, let's glitch the camera out and we'll play up that conspiracy angle. You know, and here's the funny thing. The whole conspiracy angle with like electronic interference and stuff we were talking about, much of that was born into that first movie because the drone broke while we were using it out there. It actually broke for real. So that footage you see of it crashing is it actually crashing, and it was done. Um, and so we thought, great, we came out here with a drone and we have no drone. So we actually quickly threw that plot line into the film that there was some sort of government interference, and then it took over. And we started realizing, hey, this is actually a really cool plot. So that actually happened the day we shot the whole ending of the movie. And we just changed the course of the movie in that same day.
That whole government this and it's them. And I love the fact that you're pretty much taking the piss out of him, and he doesn't even realize it.
He gets so mad at me too. See, it's like I had such a fun time playing that dynamic with him because he's such a fun, likable guy in real life. So it was so fun to be these two characters that very much you could tell they did not like each other, you know, at all. And I was just pestering him like a little brother would pick at somebody, you know, and it was fun to give him all that grief, you know, for sure.
Yeah, even in the second one, there's obviously more characters in the second one. I still think the character arc was developed enough from between yourself and Mike from the first one that you didn't need much from the two of you. And then obviously it's basically the two of you for sort of half an hour or so. And then I love the little actually I won't. I'm not going to spoil it because it's not out yet. So
the body.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say.
I know what you're talking about. That'll be a great spoiler or a great teaser for anybody watching. Yes, there's a scene with a body that you're all gonna love.
But yeah, no, I really enjoyed that. The second one, I for me as a horror fan, I'm picking the first one over the second one, but the second one clears a lot of questions you're left with. So
yeah,
if I so this is something that came up before between myself and Ian, when I was saying about the 2011 version of The Thing. So I went to see that in the cinema when it came out, and I didn't really like it. And I only watched it the once, and then I was talking to Ian one day, and he says to me, "Watch that, then watch Carpenter's one, and you'll get a newfound thing for it." And when I done it, I was like, yes. But what I'd say for this is, if you can get your hands on the two of them, watch one after another. It's only probably the length of a normal full-length movie anyway, because it's only about 2.5 hours between the two of them. So it's not going to be any different.
I have actually done exactly that because I love that movie. I think The Thing is one of the greatest horror movies ever made. I mean, it's so incredibly done. Same thing. I went and saw the prequel, and I was so upset with all the CGI instead of practical stuff that it bummed me out. But once I finally came to terms with the fact that they went CGI, the story itself is actually really good, and it does give you some very cool insight into things that you see later in the Carpenter's movie. And so I think we're on the same page. I have kind of grown to love it, despite still hating certain things about it, I guess. And it's so hard to ever match up to the original of anything. It's so hard.
Oh, like I got so angry in the cinema watching it because I thought it was a remake.
Oh, gotcha.
And then I don't know how it didn't dawn on me. So maybe it's because I got so angry watching it. And I was one of the only people in the cinema. And I remember sitting there watching it. I was giving out to myself. I was like, why did I bother paying for this? But I refused to leave because I paid for it. And
Yeah.
then, you know, when it gets to the end and you see the axe in the wall, I was like, it's a prequel. Now, it should have dawned on me before that, but uh,
it it's so cool though. I love that, and we're hoping that that people when they watch Tahoe Joe 2 will see a lot of those things, like you said, a lot of those answers that we give, and it might make them want to go watch the first movie again, um, just to see those moments that we did answer in the sequel. So I'm excited for it to come out.
yeah. As I says, I'm quite conscious of the time for yourself. So what we'll do is we'll start to close it down. Um, Obviously check out Tahoe Joe 1 and 2, Ghost, and anything else that the horror dads bring out because everything's been a fucking smash so far.
Thanks,
Um,
man.
have you got anything else you'd like to promote before we bounce out of here?
I think you hit it. Just you can follow Horror Dads on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. We have a group on Facebook where we interact with fans and stuff a lot. And um,
You
yeah, we're
occasionally
just
see me in there.
heck yeah, we're just a group of dads making movies on the weekends and having a really good time doing it. So um, stop on by and drop us a line. We love to chat with people.
Oh, you blew it. You should have done drop on by the Clown Cafe there. You blew
there's
it.
a there's a clown motel over by not that far from well, it's kind of
Oh,
between me and Vegas over here, and it's the scariest place I've ever seen in my life. You couldn't pay me enough to stay there at night. No way.
I mean, I've seen that on Instagram and Facebook and stuff. I'd love to try that, but
It's it's not even the clowns that are scary. It's the people that own it that freak me out. I think they just do a lot of methamphetamine. I probably shouldn't say that, but it's freaky. It
that's
freaks me out.
that's not confirmed nor an allegation. I'm just putting that out there. Um, but what we'll do, folks, this has been your Friday evening with the On the Slab lads. Dillon joined us tonight, obviously. But what I'll do is I'll finish this the way I finish every single Friday night. In the words of the great George A. Romero, ladies and gentlemen, stay scared.